Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could teach the gullible to never be so comfortable with lies they eat like comfort food? To disregard the bogus claims and pseudoscientific claims. Can you imagine just how much indeed the world would change? No more political predators playing on the populace, but ilkas and plots to shift and kill metropolis. No more villains with the title in the Bible, holding phony temper Bibles like the stuff they teach is vital. Imagine it was normal to have to prove a claim you make. And folks really feel ashamed expressing content that was fake. It's not to say we never make mistakes, it's just to say we go out of our way to show the evidence it takes.
Remain skeptical while you travel the road, the reason stay strapped with logic and facts. That's what it is, yo. Keep reality intact to help the truth grow. Question every claim, especially the ones you believe in. Remain skeptical while you travel the road, the reason.
Welcome to the award-winning show, Road to Reason, a skeptic's guide to the 21st century. I'm David Tamayo, president of Hispanic Americans Free Thinkers, and today we have a very special guest, attorney at Copyright and Patents, working guy here in Washington, D.C., Kendall Sheets, who's also an author by love. And,
that's right.
Welcome to have you in the show here today.
Thanks, Dave. It's great to be here.
Well, so today we have a lot of things to talk about. We're not going to be able to cover everything as usual, but the topic today will involve religion for some reason, skepticism, critical thinking. It'll involve science. It'll involve archaeology. It'll involve all kinds of things that we should do in the normal part of our lives that we fairly often don't do. But before that, we want to talk about a couple of announcements, and as always, we want to discuss I want your take on a couple of things, and actually, I'm trying to start a trend here where we get our guests to come and work and do hard labor, and we'll let them use our corporate jet, and we'll let them use probably give them some salary, half as much as I make. Of course, I need to make more, and hopefully, if you feel that this is a forum or a place where you want to be part of, please join us and be part of our show. So thank you very much for coming here today. I hope that it wasn't a hard decision to come and talk about something that you've been working at for a few days.
Well, I've done some heavy lifting on this book, and I'm here for the perks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all in the perks,
That's right.
The mini bar.
There you go.
So the first announcement that I want to do today is I want to, and this is personal, I'm taking advantage of this. I want to wish a happy birthday to Carola Miriam Calderon. She is someone that enjoys watching our show, and today she invited me for her birthday, and I should have been at her house, but this topic was far better, and I decided that, hey, I'm just going to come here and talk about this because, there's definitely a lot of material here, and I encourage everyone to stay tuned on this. So, Carola, Feliz cumpleaños, happy birthday. I don't know what other languages to say. And Feliz Natal in Portuguese. And the other quick announcement is that we're going to be having a great, fantastic show coming up on AI. So do you know what AI is?
Artificial intelligence.
I was going to say artificial insemination, but yeah, artificial intelligence is probably better. Yes, artificial intelligence.
That too.
It affects us all. It will affect us as time goes on. Some of you have heard about, and so there are all kinds of questions associated with it, from philosophy to religion. I mean, should we create an artificial intelligence that is Christian and believes in Christianity or whatever, or believes some of the other things that normal people believe? Or should it just be like Data or Spock or one of these robotic characters online? So we're going to discuss all those things. That's going to be in August. Phil Torres, author Phil Torres, is going to be here for that. He's an amazing guy. He has written the book. We've had him in the show before. His book, The End, talks about all these many ways that humans can kill themselves. 100 years ago, I think it was just like 1 or 2. Today, they're like 15, and so it's like we're going to be talking about odds.
That's right.
How many odds and probabilities can you pile on top of each other before something becomes imminent?
Before someone gets hurt.
Exactly. So be on the lookout for that. I'm hoping I get invited to be in that show because it's really a cool show. So why don't we talk about a couple of news, and I don't know where you stand on this, but why don't you go ahead and read the first news?
Okay. In this week's news, we've always heard of honor killings among religions, but never a Christian one. So, and this week, an Israeli Christian man in Israel is accused of stabbing his teenage daughter to death because authorities say he didn't approve of her relationship with a Muslim man. Sami Kara, age 58, killed his daughter, 17-year-old Henriette Kara, in their family home in the central Israeli town of Ramleh, a day after she graduated from high school. The daughter was in a relationship with a Muslim man against the urging of her parents, according to a criminal indictment that was filed in an Israeli district court this week. This sounds horrible.
It's terrible.
Right?
And,
yeah.
you know, so there are a couple of things that when I heard this story, it struck me.
Yeah.
First of all, it's something that we tend to associate with other religions, with Hinduism, perhaps, or with Islam, or other religions. Second, most people think that in Israel, you only have Jews living there, but you know, you have Christians, you have Jews, you have people, you know, Muslims, and all kinds of religions. But I don't understand what kind of indoctrination must you have, or amount of hatred to hate someone that bad. I mean, to hate your own daughter, when it's sort of the opposite, right?
It seems like I don't understand it. It's how can you hate, first of all, another person that bad? Just for
a group of people.
A group of people. Just for someone that they want to date. I mean, usually don't you ground children, just not allow them to date. You don't threaten their lives. This is
much less carry it out.
Much less carry it out. And where did this man get this idea that's okay? I mean, how can you be that enraged?
Well, you know, what's interesting, if you look at in the Middle Ages.
David,
yes.
this is God.
God. Yes.
Yes. If you want to know where people got this idea, I suggest you read the Bible. I wrote a very good chapter on stoning. Make sure you pay attention to that. It's very important.
Very good. I think it's Leviticus, if I remember correctly. Although it did talk about sons, it didn't say anything about daughters.
Well, they were stoning the woman that Jesus then came and saved.
The women do get the stoning.
They get the stoning too.
And not the good stoning.
No.
Yeah. Not the good stoning. They get the bad stoning.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's interesting that in the Middle Ages, when two kingdoms were fighting, or two groups were fighting, how did they make peace? They married each other.
They married their children.
And they married the children, and now the kids have allegiance to both, and now, you know, there's a way to... So I think the girl had it right. Heck, you know, if you're marrying sort of your enemy, and everybody's sort of marrying your enemy, that enemy becomes us, and, you know, we don't have to fight against ourselves.
That's right.
Well, ironically also, of course, is that studies that have been done in Israel show that genetically, both Israelites and Palestinians, for instance, are exactly the same people. You know, the only difference that they have genetically is the religion. But, you know, it's the same groups of people that have been there for thousands of years. So, you know, again, it's this tribalism that becomes more critical and important.
It seems tribalism, I mean, I've heard, in my own life, I've known many Protestants, many Americans, they marry or date Muslim women, or per se Muslim women, and vice versa. Over here, I've never had a problem with it, and these people live great lives. Obviously, this Israeli Christian's taken a chapter out of either a stoning book, or somehow he lost it.
Ironic.
So this is great.
Ironic. Yeah. This. If you ask this guy, he'll probably say that he hates Muslims because of all these things that they do.
Right.
Ironically, what he's done.
He may hate Muslims because of all the people the Muslims are killing, and then he's going to try and do the same thing.
And he behaved exactly as the radicals that.
Yes.
That he probably
he forgot the do unto others.
Exactly.
Part.
Exactly. So that's terrible, and it saddens me because, you know, she's a child, 17 years old. She hasn't started to live yet. You know, she knows this person that she likes, and, you know, how can love be you know, the wrong thing? I mean, it's nothing bad about it. And yet, you know, the father, his religious convictions get in the way of what should be nature, you know, a nurturing part of supporting your own child. It's terrible. So let's go into something a little bit better, I guess. Another piece of news is that recent National Geographic recently National Geographic reported that the newest major religion in the world is not Islam, so this guy can rest easy, and it's not Christianity, so the family of Islam can rest easy. It is actually the religiously unaffiliated, are what we are commonly called the nuns, and that is not N-U-N, not Catholic nuns, you know, it's nuns, N-O-N-E-S. So the nuns are these people that are, they don't go to church. Some are agnostic, some are atheists, some are just deists, or they believe in a supreme being, but they don't give any money to any a church. They don't have this, you know, priesthood or whatever, living off, you know, feeding more. And to the point that there are a lot of churches that are going out of business, which is, I like it. Because, you know, these churches get privileged. They don't pay taxes. That's true. The preachers don't pay taxes. The you know, pastoral house. That's why they live in these mansions that are, some pastors that are $6 million, dollars, and they don't pay a dime. And that means that you and I have to pay more taxes to make up for those taxes that they haven't paid. That's so, you know, so what do you think? When do you want to start a religion?
Well, we should start a religion now.
The non-religion.
The non-religion, so we can live tax-free. I'm for that. I have a big problem with a lot of these mega churches and a lot of these pastors have been caught doing all kinds of things, but it's not, they're making a lot of money. There's no oversight. It's tax-free, and they're jetting around their own private jets. They're literally living in mansions.
Oh, come on, and I envy them.
And we envy them, and we want our own private jet tax-free. So if you can't beat them, join them.
All right, well, before we go, let's do real quick. We have to go to a break, but let me give you this, question. So Jews don't recognize Jesus, right? Right. Catholics don't recognize divorce. Right. So what do Mormons not recognize?
Mormons, in a serious tone? Mormons don't recognize like Coca-Cola and diet.
No, they don't recognize each other in the liquor store.
Okay.
We're going to go to a break. We'll be right back.
I like it.
All living organisms, dogs, fish, plant life, and even us human primates, store genetic information using the same molecule, DNA. DNA, short for deoxyribonucleic acid, is an essential molecule for life and acts like a recipe holding the instructions telling our bodies how to develop and function. It's a long, thin molecule made up of something called nucleotides. Now, there are 4 different types of nucleotides. You have adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine, and they are usually represented by the first letter in each of their names, A, T, C, and G. What holds the nucleotides together is a backbone made of deoxyribose and phosphate. Now, let's take the human body, for example. Our bodies have around 210 different types of cells. Each individual cell does a different job in order to help our body function. We're talking blood cells, bone cells, and cells that make up our muscles. DNA is also organized into structures called chromosomes within the cell. The DNA gives the cells instructions on what to do. So imagine the cell is like a computer and the DNA is the code or program. The DNA code is held by different letters of the nucleotides. As the cell reads the instructions on the DNA, the different letters represents instructions. Every 3 letters makes up a word called a codon. Now, I know what you're thinking, but there are only 4 different letters. But the thing is, DNA molecules are thousands of letters long, so this allows for a billion different combinations. Just look at all the diversity of life we have on Earth. Within each string of DNA are sets of instructions called genes. A gene tells a cell how to make a specific protein. Proteins, in turn, are used by the cell to perform certain functions to grow and to survive. Now, under a microscope, DNA looks like a thin, very long string, but it turns out that it does have a specific shape called the double helix. Now, remember earlier when I mentioned the backbone of deoxyribose and phosphate? Yeah, that thing. There are 2 sets of backbones that twist together. Between those are the nucleotides represented by the letters A, T, C, and G. A different nucleotide connects to each backbone and then connects to another nucleotide in the center. And just like puzzle pieces, only certain sets of nucleotides can fit together. A only connects with T, and G only connects with C. It's also interesting to note that 99.9% of the DNA of every person on the planet is exactly the same. It's that 0.1% difference that makes us unique. Well, that's all for me today, Reapers. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to the Reaper Legion Network. And as always, please, geek responsibly.
This is Richard Dawkins. Doing commercials is unfamiliar territory for me, but I'm inviting you to watch Road to Reason, a skeptic's guide to the 21st century, on Fairfax Public Access every Sunday. Each week, the hosts tackle wishful thinking, religion, pseudoscience, and the harm they cause, with a combination of facts, humor, and community involvement. They challenge believers to defend their faith and give you, the skeptic, a voice. With live call-ins for viewers and streaming on the World Wide Web, there's never a dull moment. Don't wait. Look at them now on Facebook and YouTube. And remember to watch Road to Reason, a skeptic's guide to the 21st century, or there'll be hell to pay.
Welcome back to Road to Reason, a skeptic's guide to the 21st century. So I think we're getting ready to get into the things that we're going to talk about today, which is Mormonism. This is the Book of Mormon version, who knows what. We're going to talk about maybe a little bit about why Jesus. We're going to talk about also
my favorite book.
Book, a very
right.
thick book with lots and lots of information.
That's right.
So the author, we have the pleasure and honor of having Kendall here, the author, co-author, I should say. Let's give credit, co-author. The other person that authored this book was your dad.
That's correct. It was my dad, Meredith Ray Sheets. He's the one who really did the initial discovery. I call him analytical genius, is what this came from. And he put together, he was visited by a couple of Mormon missionaries who gave
for a second there I thought you said an angel or something.
Well, yeah. who gave him one of these. But he put the initial links together.
Okay, so we'll talk a little, before we go into it, let's talk a little bit about the Mormon religion.
Right.
So it is a religion, it's an American created religion. Some of you might have had somebody knock on your door, two handsome boys or girls with name tags, calling themselves elders, and we have barely enough to shave for the boys, and they're elders. And they will tell you, they're very nice people, very, very nice young people that come in to talk to you about Mormonism, and they're very pleasant. So I've had the pleasure a couple of times to meet with them. Have you ever sat with them?
I have listened once, but it was really before I got into this book. I didn't tell them about the book because I was kind of saving it, but I wanted to see what was their perspective, and I threw out questions.
Yes,
where'd the elephants come from?
And they don't
like
train them very well to do apologists, to be apologists for the religion. Now, this religion, let's clarify before we get started. There's not one Mormon church, is there?
That's right, David. And I want to make that clear: is that I'm not picking on Mormons. Generally,
we'll talk about why you hate Mormons in a minute.
There's going to talk about why. Yeah. The Mormon religion is made up of different sects, just like Christianity. And the main Mormon sect, I'll say the largest, is in Utah, is basically called the LDS, Latter-day Saints. There's also an independent group in Missouri, Independence, Missouri, and what happened was the group that was led by Brigham Young went out and founded the state of Deseret, that became Utah. And the group that was Smith's family members stayed behind in Missouri. They didn't go out. So that became a group, and they're called Church of Christ now. They're a large group. I visited there. And there are other sects, smaller ones. One's called Strangeites, and some have come and gone. And then, of course, there's the fundamentalists, FLDS, which
once in a while make the news for bad reasons.
That's right. Mr. Warren Jeffs is head of that one. He's currently serving time in prison. But
for what?
Sexual abuse of minors, of minor girls.
Marrying
young underage women.
Yeah, and they're into polygamy.
And they're into polygamy.
Not that there's anything wrong with polygamy or polyamorous, so long as it's by adults agreeing to it.
Yeah. And so you don't have 50 underage wives, which is what he ended up doing. Now he claims all the other Mormon sects are apostates. They are not following,
oddly enough,
the teachings of Joseph Smith, the exact teachings. And so, and of course the other ones, the Utah group gave up polygamy in the late 1800s after the Mormon Wars, and they cut a deal with the government, basically, to grant statehood, to stop the fighting, and they give up.
So they don't talk to each other, they don't have a big conference with donuts or anything like that?
I don't believe they do.
Do you ever see them getting together in the future for...
I don't see that happening in the near term.
Now, do they both send out people to other countries to bring them into Mormonism?
Now, that's a good question. The independents do.
Okay.
The ones from Missouri. They send out the nice young ladies and gentlemen. I don't think the fundamentalists do, but...
But certainly both independents and Salt Lake City, both.
They certainly do, yes.
Okay. And, okay, so before we get into anything, so why did you write this book? Well, before we go anywhere, let's say to anyone that is a Mormon out there, after listening to this show, and you want to come and sit right here and have a discussion and go over some of these things, explanations or whatever, with Mr. Sheets here, please let us know, and we'll have another show on that. You know, it could be in the form of a debate, a conversation. Unfortunately, they don't allow wine and beer over here. Otherwise, it'd be perfect.
Yeah.
But it'd be a friendly, respectful way. So welcome anyone that is a Mormon and feels that what he's going to be talking about, what we discussed today, is not right or is not real or whatever. And you may want to read the book ahead just to prepare for that. There's a lot. It looks a little daunting because it's a bit thick, but it's got a lot of pictures in it, a lot of tables, and very, very easy to read, guaranteed. So let's start with the assumption that you're trying to destroy the Mormons. And so why do you hate the Mormon Church? What did they ever do to you?
The Mormons have never done anything to me except show up at my door. Now, what
that's what it
ask
takes,
you, David, is if you look at the comments written about me, who's doing the hating here? Okay,
Yes.
so I've taken a tremendous amount of barrage, and that's okay. It doesn't bother
you don't
me.
say, I looked for it. I didn't see that you said anything negative about Mormon people.
I do not. And I've had Mormon clients. I've worked with Mormons. I've had Mormon friends in the past. I lived in Colorado. In fact, I got along great. So Mormons people, they're leaders in business, athletes,
Romney,
politicians, and they're
candidate?
some of the most successful people in this country. So no,
Good work ethic, yeah?
great work ethic, and I got no problem. I'm not trying to tell anyone what to believe.
Right.
And I'm not telling you what to believe.
And this is an academic piece of work.
This is an academic, historical piece of work. And what I did was I deconstructed, and my father and I deconstructed how Joseph Smith created the Book of Mormon.
So he made a claim,
What you do.
but you know, Joseph Smith, the founder of the religion, made a claim. He says, I came about this book in a certain way. This is what happened, and this is where it happened, and all these things. And you went and said, really, let's take a look at the book. And you actually, well, your father read the book originally.
That's right.
Not trying to debunk it or anything. He was just interested in knowing what it said.
Right.
And what happened then?
Well, back then, my father's also an amateur archaeologist, and he's dug up Ice Age animals such as mastodons and saber-toothed tigers.
And what did he do for a living?
And he's a chemical engineer.
So
my father managed
smart, educated
My father
science guy.
managed large oil refineries. Extremely smart and educated in math and science and well-read. And so he knew that the elephants died out in America over 10,000 years ago, what we call elephants, mastodons. And but in the Book of Mormon, it shows that they were here 2,000 years ago. And he said, no, that's impossible, because I've dug them up. I know better. And so that's what really piqued his interest in this.
So a contradiction between science and the Book of Mormon is what got him started.
It's what got him started. So science was actually the originator of this book. So what he did was he read the Book of Mormon a couple of times, cover to cover, and then he started sounding familiar with them, and he went and started pulling other books off of his shelf. And when he got to the book of Travels of Marco Polo, he started finding there were parallels, similar words, similar stories, and in fact, timelines, numbers, and sequences, and that a large part of this book was actually taken from the Travels of Marco Polo.
And have you read the Book of Marco Polo?
I have.
I'm just giving you an excuse to show that you actually do own one.
I brought with me.
This is I'm afraid to touch this book. You know, it's from the 1800s.
This is a rare book. It's from the 1800s. This is an original copy from 1811.
Wow. Yes.
Can
Beautiful.
everyone see? The Travels of Marco Polo by editor William Marsden. It's published in London. And
so
the
really only
map,
educated people tend to read these kinds of things. I mean,
Right.
and even I would say that today, young people today, you take any 20 to 30-year-old person,
Yeah.
it'd be rare if they have read Marco Polo.
It would probably be rare today, and this is
I think it was,
this is a pretty thick book now.
Yes, yes.
It's daunting, although it's
a good set
it's a
of
great
stories.
story. People just want to watch videos now. They don't want to.
They want a movie.
Yeah, they want a movie. They want the movie
effects.
version on Netflix or something. So what he did. So this is not the only book.
Yeah.
So the discovery led from. He used Marco Polo as an outline and copied as the book proceeded. And we call that percent through the text procedure.
Okay, explain that
And
clearly again.
So David, you take the Book of Mormon.
So I have the Book of Mormon.
And I'm going to take Travels
Polo.
of Marco Polo.
Yes.
And we're going to open, say, grab about a third of the way through that
we
book.
open about a third and a third.
And that's about a third.
Yes.
And if I start reading in this book and start reading in this book, before or after this page, I'm eventually going to get
Within a page or two, you...
within a percent.
Percent, yeah.
1 to 2%. To 3 to 4, 1, 2, 3, 4%. I'm going to find a name or a story that's been copied.
So let's assume worst case scenario, 5%. What you're saying really is with a 95% accuracy, you'd find that similar story, similar sequence, similar everything.
Yes.
Because, you know,
and it's not a page by page because, and it's not even this Book of Mormon because the original Book of Mormon is from, was published in 1830. It has 588 pages.
Hasn't been modified and it's not been condensed.
So I used the original Book of Mormon along with the original Travels of Marco Polo, and that's how we made the comparison. It's a one-to-one.
So how'd you get your hands on a Book of Mormon from the 1800s?
Well, those cost $100,000. So what I did was I downloaded one from the internet.
Oh man,
someone had
for
scanned.
a second there I thought, my new rich friend.
Yeah. So if you have one of those, I'd be happy to have a donation of one. I'd hold on to it.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, and so this methodology became apparent to your dad.
Yes.
Wow, that's a lot of work going book by book, sort of
Years.
documenting.
And you have to read each book multiple times to even get a feel for it. And then you have to go through this book, read 30, 40 pages, and then read 30, 40 pages here, 30, 40 pages.
So it's just a
30.
coincidence that your dad happened to be very familiar with the Marco Polo book.
Right.
And when he read this one, he said, sounds familiar. The story sounds familiar.
It did, yes.
And so... does it work for the entire book or just the first half?
It works for most of the book, yes.
Okay.
The very tail end, the last 2 chapters, no, and I'll explain why in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
But up until, because those 2 were added on at the very end, this Book of Ether and the Book of Moroni. But what we also found was that there are also a lot of stories in here. So Marco Polo, if anyone's familiar with the movie, where he traveled from Venetia to Jerusalem with his father and his father's brother, and then he traveled over Asia to meet Kublai Khan, the Grand Khan of the Tatar Empire. Mm-hmm. And Marco Polo then traveled all over. He became one of the administrators for the Kublai Khan, and he traveled all over the kingdom and took notes and recorded them. When he finally made it back to Venetia, he dictated those, and that became this book. Okay. So there's stories of battles, of religion, of history.
So when you say that the stories are the same or similar or plagiarized, let's use the word. They're plagiarized. What makes a story or something plagiarized? How do we know that it's just not coincidence, or how do we know that this story here that matches this story here is plagiarized? Okay,
should we ask God for slide 2?
God,
I need slide 2.
Slide 2, and yes.
So here's a slide I prepared, David.
I knew that.
He's just making us pray for it.
So what I did was, here's 2 examples. This demonstrates the percent through the text procedure and what you're asking me, David. How do we know something's plagiarized or something's copied? So if you open the Book of Mormon, the original one, what I did was I took both books and I said, let me open them both at 2/3 of the way through, 66.66%. And then I went back and forth in each book, seeing are there any stories the same.
If your theory, if your at that point hypothesis worked,
it should work.
It should predict it.
It should predict it. Actually, my father, he made this comparison.
Yes.
So if you look at, in the Book of Mormon, page 380, or 64.6%, there's a story that's on the right side of this slide. Marco Polo at 66.53% is a story on the left side. This story about being inside a walled city. It's about soldiers. They drank wine, they got drunk, they fell asleep, some murdered. The other story, they could have slain them. But if you look at the words here, and I think it's easy for everyone to see, walled city, wine, wine, fatigue, where you drink in excess, take the wine freely. Marco Polo's on the left. I call it Joseph Smith, or the Book of Mormon
on the right, yeah.
On the right. And this is key, at the same, what I call the same percentage, within less than 2% in each book. Now, if you do the opposite, let's take the opposite. Let's look at 1/3 of the way through the two books.
Yes.
And let's look at open the Book of Mormon 1/3 and open Marco Polo 1/3. And what do you find? You find that there's a city called Manji in this book, written by Marco Polo, which is a southern land in Asia. And in this book, there's a city called Manti, which is a southern city of the Nephites.
In the U.S.
In
Americas.
In the Americas. So yes, part of this book took place in the Holy Land. Most of it in the Book of Mormon were stories about the Promised Land, which was in the Americas.
Yeah, in the American natives and all of that, yeah.
So what Joseph Smith did, he took a name of a place out of Marco Polo that was in Asia, changed it from Manji to Manti, but still placed it at 33% in each books. So you can test this out.
You can tell he's copying and change. Let's just change this word a little bit, and let's change these numbers a little bit, or
yeah, exactly. Now,
so really a bad plagiarist.
Bad plagiarist.
I mean, it's a long book. You got to give it.
I can't say bad. I call it. He
could have done better.
He could have done better, but it took many years for someone to decode all this. We'll get into that in a second. Why it's so hard.
Yeah. So
do you want to see another example?
Yes. So what other thing would give it away being slide 3?
You need to pray for slide 3.
Yeah, there we go.
Thank you, God.
Little praying.
So what we have on the top of these comparisons are names out of the Travels of Marco Polo compared with names in the Book of Mormon. I put percentages in here to show this percentage through the text. It's not always perfect, but it's a guide.
Yes.
A lot of it matches up. Some of it, you can see he mixed around.
It's certainly more than 50-50.
It's certainly more than 50-50.
Yeah,
right.
And that's the part that throws it off. I mean, even if it's 5% off, that means that it's 95% the other way.
It's 95%, exactly. And so you've got names like Lama, who's a priest in Tibet. You've got names like Layman, who is the brother of Nephi. You've got the name Liang, which is a Chinese name, Asian name for money. And the name Leah, L-E-A-H, which is money in the Book of Mormon. So same words, Leah and Liang. You've got the name Manji and Manti. Like I said before, you've got the name Melik and Melik for Lord or Chief.
How many?
So
we're talking about 10 words?
Hundreds.
Hundreds of words that follow this.
If you look at that book, I've got thousands of comparisons like this, literally.
Incredible.
I mean, that's why it's 600 pages.
So the question then begs, so someone can say, look, these two names being the same, okay, coincidence.
Yeah.
Two names, 3, 10, 20. So how many quacks before it's a duck? How many?
I have a list of probably at least 100, and I took unique names.
Yes.
These are unique, proper names. These are things
you don't see anywhere else.
You don't see anywhere else. So some criticism, you can change names, it's easy to plagiarize, you can do that. Okay, so what? I said, okay, God, slide 4, please.
More evidence.
There we go.
There you go.
No, that's still slide 3. There we go. What we did was we took the numbers out of Marco Polo, compared those to the numbers in the Book of Mormon.
What do you mean by numbers?
So, for example, at the beginning of the Book of Mormon, there's a number 4. There's 4 brothers take a trip to Jerusalem. Those brothers take 4 trips back and forth from Jerusalem. And in the Marco Polo, there are brothers that take 4 trips back and forth from Acre, which is the holy city near Jerusalem. And the trips are both between 1% and 3%.
So one coincidence.
One coincidence.
Okay, what else? What else you got? Give me another one.
We've got it at 2% and 3%, 2 brothers in Venice, 3 sons and daughters. What we did was we take this list, you go down, this is by percent through the book. Wow. 7%, 3 to 4. 8%, 9%, the number is 600. 29%, 40 days journey, and a 40 days wandered.
So why do you think he kept more or less similar, or the same or very similar numbers?
I see it. If we could switch to slide 5, please. We'll explain that. These are numbers.
By the way, you keep reading my mind on these questions that I'm asking.
I don't know how that happens.
I hope God is not helping you on this.
A lot of these numbers have to do with battles. So Joseph Smith wrote a lot about the battles, and he actually plagiarized the battles out of Marco Polo and the battles of Cortez and the Mayan Indians. But for the ones out of the Marco Polo wrote numbers. How many soldiers were there? How many were slain? How many was in a guard? So we've got numbers like 6,000 from Ching Ku's men at 41%, 62 of Nephites slain at 38%. The number 2,000 guards, the number 2,000 guards, both at 64% exactly.
Basically at the predicted location.
Yeah.
And the sequence of battles and things, it's more or less the same. It has to be the same in order for the...
Because Joseph Smith did not have experience, no one did, writing about battle scenes of giant armies. So what would you do? You'd want to sound authentic, stick with the numbers.
Someone that doesn't know about a particular battle at a particular place, saying 600,000 versus 60,000, wouldn't know.
Right.
Yeah, so.
Now what's interesting, this number 240,000 is the number of Tatar soldiers invading Japan. It was written in here. And Smith used number 240,000 at 90% of the way through instead of 76 as the total number of Nephite soldiers slain. What's interesting in this number is that description I just said about the soldiers invaded Japan was not written by Marco Polo. That was historical fact written by William Marsden, the editor, in a footnote.
In a footnote. So it was there just in a footnote.
And there's other footnotes with numbers, and I've got other clues how Smith also copied footnotes out of this particular book into the Book of Mormon.
Because those footnotes usually are to clarify historical facts, and he said, hey, let me just put the right numbering. How would I know the right number?
Right, and so that's how it nailed it down. It was actually this particular 1818.
So, okay, so let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Are you trying to say that Joseph Smith was a con man?
I'm speaking through my book.
All right.
He was actually convicted as a con man. I'll let that speak for itself.
Okay.
He's convicted as, he was part of this company. He would take a stone, call it a seer stone.
Now, okay, just for the record, a seer stone, and I'm trying to think of my mythological... seer stone is a stone that allows a particular person to somehow see or read something that no one else can, and he can't without that stone.
Right.
Magic stone.
Magic stone.
So the religion has a magic stone.
Yeah. And he would use a magic stone. He'd go to the farm and say, hey, I see, taking my magic stone, I see a gold mine under your property.
Like the rods that...
like the divining rods. And,
oh
my God, I see a treasure that the Indians have left on your property. It's full of silver.
I'm sure he did that for free as a volunteer.
Well, he and his company, if you pay me and my friends, we'll dig for you. And they go digging all over the East Coast, all over New York.
Find a little pebble here.
And so he finally, one of his victims took him to court, and Smith actually confessed, and there's a record of it. I don't go into that detail in my book about it, but the fact is there is a court record there.
Now, does your...
But that parlays into how he created this book. So he used the same thing where he took a stone. He claimed he saw an angel when he was 14, 15 years old. This angel showed him in a vision where these gold plates were buried in a hillside in upstate New York.
This is a time where a lot of people believed in angels.
And a lot of people would, yes, exactly. And so the angel said, if you go find these gold plates, they have a record written on them of the ancient people of America, which is this, the Book of Mormon. And so he claims he went and dug up the plates, then he hid them inside of a tree, and then didn't take the plates to read them, but instead took his hat, put a stone in the hat, put the hat up to his face, and they could see the transcription of the gold plates hidden in the tree. And I'm not making this up. That's actually in the...
For a second there,
they let you know.
I was talking...
I have read every historical book about Joseph Smith and Book of Mormon that there is. So
are you saying that the Smithsonian doesn't consider this the actual history of the American natives, et cetera, et cetera?
I'm not saying the Smithsonian said that. Someone sent them a Book of Mormon, and there's a letter is published, and they said we do not
they call it BS.
They call it out as BS. It's not.
So now what? So you guys published this a couple of years ago.
That's right.
And the church immediately called in and said, "Hey, thank you for pointing this out.
Oh, they were so appreciative.
We're going to start dismantling the church because
they offered me a position at Brigham Young. tenured professor come and
What
teach
other
this.
fantasies do you have?
I can actually make some money off the book now.
Yeah.
I don't know why all the Mormons think I'm like going to retire from the sales of the
One of my questions is, so how many Teslas Model S have you bought with this book?
It's still in my dreams.
Well, most authors that I know write because of the love to truth.
Right.
Or they have a hidden agenda, like they want to create a religion.
Yeah, that's right.
And convince people of it. There's they say there's a sucker born every minute, and I still don't understand. Does your book talk about all the science today that we have that shows that the original people, the bad people that they said were here, Native Americans,
the Lamanites,
that they were not, this book claims that they were a tribe.
So the book claims, the story of the Book of Mormon is this Jewish family, this Hebrew family, came from Jerusalem in 600 BC. And this father Lehi had four sons, but two of them, one was Lehi, one was Laman. Once they got here, they grew and somehow quickly became giant tribes.
Like
started fighting,
Cain and Abel.
Cain and Abel started fighting against each other, and God cursed the Lamanites with dark skin. Loathsome dark skin.
So those darkies are just bad.
It was the bad darkies against the white purists, who were the Nephites.
Oddly enough.
Yes.
No wonder Jesus is blonde in the depiction that they have.
And I believe it wasn't until the late 70s until at least the Salt Lake City LDS even allowed Mormons to join and to become a bishop.
The black people.
The black people to
So African Americans were not allowed to be part of the priesthood until 1978 because they were the cursed people, the bad people.
They came from the cursed Lamanites.
And of course, obviously it was part to demonize American natives.
Right.
And so what does science say about this?
So to get back to your question, no, I don't go into the DNA analysis. I've read these books. There's some fantastic books out there. And I encourage anyone just to do a search. There's some great authors. That's been done. Yes. And I don't, what I did with this, I focused on the historical record between these two books.
Okay. But you don't, so do you mention, I understand the Book of Mormon talks about silk, steel, chariots, and all those things.
I do go into a lot of that, and actually, if we could get some help out to show slide 1, I think this will help answer that question.
So maybe God will hear slide 1.
Prayers for slide 1 sometime soon. While we're looking for slide 1, what it is, how Joseph Smith approached this. Why there's been problems with the archaeology, the timing. There's no silk. There's no horses. Especially in his timing, there's no elephants.
2,000 years ago.
2,000 years ago. Where are the elephants? Well, the elephants died out in the Ice Age. How can they write it they have elephants? How can they write they had horses? Like tame horses, and they're riding chariots.
And steel. And
they have steel swords. When it's from contemporary record, the Indians didn't have steel here. Only
it's all
the Spanish
European
did.
stuff.
It's all Europeans brought all of that. So they had lots of gold and copper, but they didn't have steel. They didn't have good metallurgy here. But what Joseph Smith did was he took not just so those things and occurrences in America are not in this book. This is in Middle East and Asia.
Right.
So where did he get those? So that's why I started looking around, saying, well, let's look at other historical records.
So where did he get the silk, the metals, and other things that are not in this book? But
so there's.
For a second there, you thought he could have invented it.
Did he invent this? Oh my gosh, he really did know about that. He really did see an angel. No, what happened was in the early 1800s, there was editors that created these travels and history books. One was editor Robert Kerr, John Pinkerton.
People love reading those.
They published between 17 volume sets, 24 volume sets. I've read them all. One of the stories is the Conquest of Mexico by Bernal Diaz, which was written in the late 1500s, but then translated into English in 1811, published in one of these travel history books that also, in each one of these sets, included the travels of Marco Polo.
One of the sets.
And
it was sort of the Encyclopedia Britannica of the day.
It actually was, because people, there was no internet, okay? They didn't know what was on the other side of the world. A lot of these stories were written in Spanish or Italian or Arabic, and so these authors translated into Arabic and all these languages.
Book producers are enjoying these translations.
Exactly. Yeah. And so he took all of these records and filled in, using kind of the Travels of Marco Polo as an outline, and filled in these stories. And the conquest of Mexico, when Cortez invaded, first he fought the Tlaxcalans, then he went up against the Chalcans, and then they befriended the Mexicans, the Aztecs.
Yeah.
Montezuma, and everyone knows that story. Well, what Joseph Smith did, he took that story as Cortez, being the Nephites, he's the Christian with the steel swords, the white guy, and then the Aztecs were the Lamanites, with the wooden swords and lower technology, and the idol worshippers and the evil people and with the dark skins.
So how many of those swords from the Lamanites?
From the Nephites. The steel swords from the Nephites.
From the wooden swords.
Oh, the wooden swords.
Yeah, how many of those have we encountered, archaeology has encountered in this country?
Oh, well, if you go to the Archaeological Museum at any of the Mormon churches, you'll see.
I've been to the one in
You've been
Salt
to that
Lake,
one. You'll see the
City.
Nephite swords. You'll see the. Okay, we're.
I was going to say, I didn't see that.
All right, there is no archaeological museum at any of these churches, so there is no Nephite sword. There's no Lamanite sword. I've been to the Hill Cumorah, where allegedly millions of Lamanites and Nephites
died there.
There's
tons of things.
I asked, where's the archaeological museum? I'd like to see some of these swords and breastplates and the steel, and no, there's none. So not one.
No shred of evidence.
I've asked on my blogs and my Facebook site, someone please at least show me a picture.
Right, so assuming right now that someone watching us knows of such a museum or has some or whatever, where can they contact you to talk about this, get more information, or be able to discuss with you some of this, set you straight?
Certainly. So if you want to set me straight and give me some good good knowledge that Joseph Smith had that I missed, you can go to Facebook, Book of Mormon, Book of Lies, on my Facebook site. You can get more information about this book. I've posted partial chapters, some almost full chapters, a lot of photographs. This book is thick, but is actually a lot of pictures and a lot of graphs. And I've put a lot of that up on the Facebook site because I want people to get interested in it. And
if you are a Mormon and you believe in truth, you should
check this out.
You should check this out because it's got very, very good information. And even if you're not,
Right, and I've scanned and published the books that I used to all these books from Pinkerton, from James Duncan, The Modern Travelers, published in the 1825. I've scanned these on the internet. Yeah. I encourage people download these and check it out yourself.
Learn it,
See how he did this.
So this is the thing. This is the thing. What I like about this is very open. It's not you're not becoming rich with this. You're not. I mean, you have a career, a very successful career. You have you've never depending on anyone buying or believing this. The idea here is to someone made a claim. There are lots and millions of people that believe in this, and well, let's let it stand to the light of day and see if it matches. Wouldn't they be the first ones if you actually had confirmed the stuff in there? They'd be the ones touting and telling everybody, here, evidence, proof. But I think no religion likes to be shown that that they're what they claim to be and take up on faith.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. I think there are a lot of people, the majority, if not all, but the majority believe that this is true. And your brain puts these barriers that no, there's got to be a mistake. I don't know what the mistake is. I don't understand it. I'm not even going to look at it because I just I know there's got to be. How do you deal with those people?
I get on Facebook and other emails. I get lots of hate mails. Shockingly. And most of these
from Muslims, I'm sure. Right?
Oh yeah. So
hey, I got to say something. It could be other religions, and we might have bodyguards outside.
That's right.
So, or you may not have a career.
Well, if it was a few years ago, the Danites.
Scientologists, for instance, they would have destroyed you already. And
the Mormons won't like to hear this, but the Danites were their enforcers back then. So they would have been after me. Yeah. I don't think the Danites are around anymore.
Let's hope not.
Danites, whatever they call them. But no, it's they don't want to, because if you've something your whole life have been told is true, how can that possibly be wrong?
Well, and you have to then admit to yourself that you have been suckered.
Yeah.
That, and you know, when I became an atheist, I was a Roman Catholic for 42 years, and I was, you know, upset at myself. Mostly, I was angry. I was, you know, that first year, I was angry at myself for being such an idiot. Why wouldn't I question this? Why didn't I see all the things that I now see clear as day?
Yeah.
And so I think there's a veil of faith that protects people, and you feel like, you know, the first thing that came to mind to me is like, how much money, can I calculate how much money I gave the church? Can I, how much time did I waste that I could have been doing something more useful? I could have been a brain surgeon by now. You know,
my sister and I have had this conversation, actually. Shout out to her. Yeah, you're right. You know, what could you do with that money? Where did your money go?
Yeah.
And so this church in Salt Lake City, I believe they require 10%.
And I understand that fairly often you got to prove to them that.
Oh, you have to prove.
Show
yes.
your taxes.
Yes.
That
you have to prove that you're giving 10%. So it's a very strict code. I know this for a fact. I've had family that's lived in Salt Lake City, and we've talked to their neighbors. So I know exactly what goes on, at least in that area. But I don't think believing in the Book of Mormon or believing it's true makes you an idiot. You're not stupid.
In fact,
you've been taught something. A lot of us, if we're just taught one way, how are we supposed to believe another way? But the closed-mindedness you're talking about, okay, I've shown you something different. I'm not out to I don't hate Mormons. I'm not out to get them.
And you're not even trying to convert them.
I'm not trying to convert anyone. And you can believe it, fine. If you want to see where your book came from, read this book.
There's the evidence. Yeah. Now, what I saw mostly are people that say, this book sucks. I think you don't know what you're talking about. I'm giving you 1 star. Yeah. And then the typical comment from somebody else would be, why don't you read the book? Instead of criticizing it, saying it sucks, saying it's no good, without even reading it. And I think is that protection is this fear that they're going to be, someone's going to show to them and prove to them that the basis of the faith, which is, this is the basis of their faith, it's no good. And I think this is one of the many, in my opinion, this is sort of the nail, I guess, or the huge nail, because like you said, there's for years other things have been accumulating. Yeah. The problem that Mormonism has is that it's a modern religion. We know how it started. We know who started. Many other religions are obscured by histories, you know, by the longevity in history, and so we've lost a lot of. And now you can say, well, you can't prove wrong our claims.
We go back thousands of years. How can you possibly prove that wrong?
Exactly. So you've done this work, and what would you like to see more, you know, be done more? What are sort of the next steps on this? Okay. Do we just drop it and go to the next awful book, or do we say there's still more stuff that can be done?
There's a lot more can be done. What's we got planned for the future, and what I've always had planned is to do more of a statistical analysis of this book.
A deep statistical analysis.
Deep analysis. So if you can run this book, there's certain software programs and there's certain specialists in statistics.
Every college student knows.
I know some statistics. I took Calc 3. I did well in it, thank you. But I'm not an expert in it.
No, and you want someone,
I want someone who's an expert in it, and that's great. There's plagiarizing software that colleges use now to detect plagiarism. Run this through it. Do it.
So one thing that
I think we're going to do that.
We got about 5 minutes left, and one thing that is sort of key to this surprising, to me, the surprise in this book was that most people think Joseph Smith came up with this book. Did he come up with this book? Are you convinced that he came up with this book on, you know, I don't know, a weekend or something?
Well, he was sitting back having a beer one day when he was 15 years old and saw an angel. You know, went out the woods.
Usually that happens with LSD. Not LDS.
He didn't come up with the book. So that's a surprise ending, so what happened is...
So you present the evidence that shows this.
I present the evidence. So his mother, Lucy Mack Smith, she came from a fairly educated family. Her brother was a trader, international trader in shipping back and forth from England. Helped Joseph Smith Sr. try and get started in business, did some international shipping with them. So these were not country bumpkin farmers, okay? They traveled to Boston and they traveled to Philadelphia. But so after, in 1858, This is after Brigham Young had taken the majority of the Mormons out to Utah.
Have they broken at that point yet?
They broke.
At that point, they've
kind of broken, yes. Yeah. No, they haven't fully broken because she's still receiving a stipend.
Okay.
Because she's the mother of the prophet.
Right.
But Brigham Young basically said, you need to come out here, and so a group of them said, no, we're staying in independence. They didn't agree with the transition of power, and there's other books about
politics
that.
And stuff, yeah.
And so, but she wrote a book, and it's a very sad book. It's a book about her family, what happened, a lot of people dying, the sickness. Biography of her family. It's called Historical Sketches of Joseph Smith the Prophet. But she wrote in there a very interesting story. So at the beginning of this book, Book of Mormon, there's something called the Tree of Life vision. And this character named Lehi, who's the father of the Nephites, Nephi and Laman, he has this vision, sees a tree, and the tree has this white fruit on it, it's glowing. He goes over and tastes it, and it tastes really good. And the tree then, he sees a rod of iron, the rod of iron goes to a fountain. Now, that story is out of this 1818 Book of Marco Polo, and I've traced it, I got the story in there. He copied this from a coconut tree and a watering pipe for irrigation. What Lucy Smith did, she had the same story in her book, saying, though, it was actually Joseph Smith Sr., her husband, had this vision in 1811. Well, Smith Jr. was born in 1805. So how could Sr. have the same vision in 1811? She wrote the same vision in her book.
He's 6 years old and hears this story, maybe.
Except the difference in the version is that instead of the white fruit, it says it was shaped like a prickly pear, like a chestnut. And
so this is what the Book of Mormon says.
This is what the Book of Mormon.
Which is different than the book you're looking at.
No, this is what her book says.
Yeah, her book. I'm sorry, yes.
This is what Lucy's book says. The vision Smith Sr. saw, it looks like a prickly pear, like a chestnut. And that is not in this 1818 Marco Polo book. It's different.
So the 1818 Marco Polo is not there, and you're thinking, okay, it doesn't match.
And she said, my husband saw this in 1811. I thought, well, that's odd, because this wouldn't have even been published then. How could he possibly? I didn't know they copied out of here.
Yeah, Marco Polo was.
So what happened? So that drove me to further research. I went down to the Library of Congress. I went out to universities. And I found that there's a story of Marco Polo by in John Pinkerton's book, published, guess what year?
1811.
And guess what it had in it?
The prickly
pear like a chestnut. So
the
same date, the same word, the same story. What she did, she was pointing us that it was actually my husband Sr., and we started in 1811.
Had started
this. So now that is the evidence out of her book.
Yes.
And
out of her own mouth.
Out of her own mouth, mother of the prophet has said that her husband actually started this whole venture.
Wow.
This whole scheme.
Well, we could stay here our entire day doing this, and we never run out of things to talk about.
No.
I encourage anyone that is interested in the Mormon church and the Mormon religion, etc., to look at this. And if you're a member of the Church of Mormon, you should want the truth, regardless of where the evidence takes you. So please investigate more, try to learn more about it, become familiar with every book that is out there. But also, I want to thank you, Kendall, for being here today and being so good at short notice of coming in and talking about this. This is an amazing thing, amazing amount of work. And I will make sure that you get some help in trying to get moving forward on some of the more technical stuff to continue the analysis of this book. Until then, we see you all next time.